This is Right On Radio, the voice of the true right.
Welcome to Right On Radio. My name is Daniel Friberg.
And I'm John Morgan.
And I'm Jonas Tegeer.
And the topic of today's program is the Arktos event in Budapest and the situation in Sweden. And for that purpose, we have two guests today. Ingrid Carlqvist, famous Swedish author, journalist and writer, and distinguished senior fellow at the New York-based Gatestone Institute. And we also have Conrad, who is a former left-winger and anti-racist, who 5 years ago made a political U-turn and is now co-hosting very popular Swedish podcasts focusing on the issues of immigration. Welcome, Ingrid and Conrad.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
First of all, we met just yesterday, and you visited our little event here in Budapest. We had an exclusive Arktos event for people associated with us and some special guests, and you were among those very special guests. So maybe you could start off by telling us a little bit about your impressions of that event and the weekend as a whole. Yeah. Any one of you?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I really wanted to. I think the speeches were great. We had a few short speeches before we had the dinner, and I felt really they were inspiring speeches, and we talked a lot about people are feeling alone, but we really aren't alone, and it was really nice for me to see that things are happening in the background. The wheels are turning, books are being presented, and even more books are coming soon. Much thanks to you, Daniel, and Arktos. And again, I always feel when you really meet people in person. I mean, we could have these arguments on the internet. We could talk to each other on Skype. We could email back and forth, but that doesn't compare to really meeting each other and just shaking each other's hand and looking each other in the eyes. That's a really important thing to do. And I'm very, very happy and grateful to be able to join this dinner.
Mm.
Yeah, I would like to say congratulations, because I know how hard it is to publish books and to get people to buy them. I was in that business for a while, and you think you have the best book in the world and you believe that people buy it in tens of thousands, but it's really actually very hard. I mean, especially when you have no possibility to be in the bookshops, just selling it by internet shops and so on. So really congratulations, and congratulations to you, Daniel, because your book is your number one super hit, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is, and thank you very much. And it's actually out in bookshops all over Hungary right now, and which is a very interesting market for us, because the Hungarian edition, although Hungary is a quite small country, has actually been doing better than both the Swedish and the English edition, where we have a lot more contact with the market and so forth. But being able to have the book out in regular bookshops really makes a difference. That's kind of the lesson we've learned from the Hungarian edition.
We've occasionally gotten books into bookshops in the Western Europe and the US, but it is fairly uncommon, I'd have to say. It's not in any, but it's not in all bookshops, that's for sure.
Yeah, of course, we have had books out in bookshops here and there all over the West, of course, but here it's out in pretty much every bookshop, so that surely helps quite a lot, and it also helps having the book promoted by the mainstream media, which is not really the case in most other countries, especially in Western Europe.
Strangely enough.
Yeah, I can't understand why.
But Daniel, how many languages is it translated to now, and how many is it going to be translated to?
Well, let's see. So it's always hard to keep track because there are so many. But Swedish, English, German, Hungarian, Dutch. I think we're up to 5 now, and it's currently being translated into Greek, Polish, Portuguese. The Portuguese edition will be out in just 1 week, I think. French, and I think also Croatian, and I'm sure I've missed a few languages, but at least 5 editions, language editions, are out already, and at least 5 more are in the works and will be out soon. But I'm sure I've missed a couple. So yeah, it will be a lot. Before the end of the year, I'm sure it will be out in like 15 languages or so.
That's great.
Wow, that is quite impressive, yeah.
Thanks. So, anything else to add regarding the weekend? I hope you enjoyed the city as well, and you found it as beautiful as I find it. So.
Yeah, I didn't know that I could appreciate architecture the much I did, because the buildings are just beautiful and they're everywhere. And as my colleague Ingrid said time and time again, this is a city built by people who believed in themselves. That's really amazing. Wherever you go, you're surrounded by beautiful buildings, and there are some ugly ones too, but they are always the exception. So I would really recommend everyone to go there if you haven't been to Budapest.
And not
I think the fact that it's been blown apart twice in the last century and rebuilt makes it even more amazing to me.
Yeah,
and they have had a communist past for half a century as well. So.
And that is very interesting, because even though they were actually suffering under a communist dictatorship for many decades, the city is still more traditional and more beautiful than any Swedish city, because we have had much more destruction and a much more modern architecture in Sweden, even though we've never been part of the Soviet bloc or anything like that. We've just had very evil people running our country, and especially making the decisions that we should tear down beautiful buildings and replace them with kind of square modernist monstrosities that we have in our bigger cities now.
Well, and not all of them. I mean, you do get it, but I mean, I must sort of interject and say that, Stockholm is still overall a beautiful city.
It is. I agree. I'm mostly talking about Gothenburg here, because Gothenburg is a totally disgusting city when it comes to architecture. I mean, it looks horrible. I'm sad to say this, because it's my home. It's my hometown. I mean, I should be proud of it, but I simply can't, because it's so. Disgusting.
I think you're too hard on it. Actually, I think and I've lived there as well for what was it, 4 years? Yeah. I think the center of the city is actually quite nice still.
Quite nice, but if you look at it from when you arrive by boat, for example, and you enter the harbor, you only see these modernist buildings and this horrible monstrosity of this. I mean, this tall skyscraper in white and red. And things like that. It's horrible. It's just depressing to see. It's. I think we have much more modernist architecture in Gothenburg. I mean, compared to the more traditional one. Yeah.
I agree with you, Daniel. I think Gothenburg is one of the ugliest cities I've ever seen. Really.
Come on.
Yeah, but it is. It is. You don't have a feeling that you are by the sea. And when you see some water, it's just, ugly buildings, sort of old industries. But I want to go back to Budapest and say that even though it's so pretty, it's so beautiful, that was not my first and foremost impression, because I've seen that before. But this time I was really thinking about how safe I felt. Everywhere I walked around, I didn't even, think about my handbag being open. I left it even at the, to go to the restroom or something, just left it, because I felt so safe. I felt like I used to feel in Sweden back in the 70s, 80s, something like that.
The funny thing is the Hungarians think it's quite dangerous here, but that's because they don't know anything else.
That's really the absurd, because almost wherever you go in the world, you feel a lot safer than you do here in Sweden. I mean, when I talk to people, I talked to some Hungarians and I asked, is it safe here? And they were, well, I don't know. That 2 months ago, I saw 2 people fighting. And just, what? The group rape daily in Sweden. It feels like you're coming from a war zone, actually.
Yeah. I mean,
in some sense.
Yeah, but obviously the Hungarians think that Budapest is unsafe, but it's because they're comparing it to the countryside, which is even safer. But I mean, Budapest compared to anyone coming from Western Europe is like super safe. I mean, it's like a paradise when it comes to low crime rates and so forth.
Budapest would be the size of Stockholm, wouldn't it? Or even bigger, perhaps.
Bigger.
Yeah, it's about 50% bigger than Stockholm, or even 60-70% bigger. And there are far less crimes in Budapest than in Stockholm, of course. I mean, rapes are practically non-existent or extremely uncommon, at least. And
of course, there's no relation to the fact that there's almost no immigration in Hungary. That's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
The crime rates are so low, and they have an ethnically homogeneous society.
Because the high crime rates in Sweden is a good thing, because it means that more people in Sweden are reporting the crimes now, according to Jerzy Sarnecki, the expert. So we should of course trust him and just relax and be happy.
Just today there was a story in the Malmö newspaper Sydsvenskan about the new public swimming pool that they built last year, and it cost around 350 million kroner.
And why did they close the old one, Ingrid?
Because it was so infested with people who couldn't behave, so they destroyed the whole place, and so they closed it and they built a new one for like 35 million euro. And after 6 months, the newspaper reported today about 30 incidents of people pooping in the pool. And
matters of fecal concern.
There were so many things, but the worst thing of all, I think, is half of the people who work there, they feel unsafe. They say they are afraid because they get threatened, and they also had experienced some violence. Half of the people working in the public swimming pool are scared because of threats and violence. So we called the journalist who wrote it, and she said, and we asked her, who are we supposed to be afraid of? She says, men. Okay, all kinds of men. I don't know. Have you asked the people who work there, who are they afraid of? Could it be the Muslim young men? Because that's what we've seen in so many public swimming pools here in Sweden. And she said, no, why should it be like that? That has nothing to do with your religion. And she wasn't even interested in the story. She was calling the person who rang sort of a racist, but because that could have nothing to do with it. But it didn't used to be like this in the 70s. You could go to the public swimming pools. Even in the 90s, I think you could go to the swimming pool without being scared. And she said, no, there's no difference. It's always been like this. It's just crazy.
But I mean, that's the politically correct, not narrative, but that's how you have to construe it. You can't say that this is, she'd lose her job if she would write that, this is actually a problem with immigrants behaving this way. So she has to sort of place it in one of these politically correct categories, and so it has to be males versus females, because that's all right. That's sort of sanctioned by the system. I mean, that's how it works.
Or even worse,
she
might actually. Sorry.
I know this journalist. That she's not 25 years old. She is like 60 or something. So she knows. Of course, she knows. And I just detest these people who are so cowardice that they don't even protest against it and try to write something about it. But
the thing is, Ingrid, if she's that age, I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years' time, when she's retired, she might go out and write something about it.
Yeah,
this is a phenomenon we've seen time and time again. But of course, then these people sort of don't really matter. But if in the eyes of their fellow journalists. But that's quite common, actually, that people do that when they've retired.
But I just think that I hope that Hungary will never have these problems. That you could go on swimming, in the spas that Budapest is famous for, without Muslims groping women and raping them in the bathtubs.
They're certainly working on that. I mean, this Visegrad group. I mean, that's one of the things they're working on right now. Is the 4 member states are trying to resist the EU's attempts to impose quotas on all of them.
And I don't think the EU will ever succeed with that, because they would rather leave the EU than accept these quotas. I mean, even Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban said explicitly during his latest speech at the national holiday, March 15, that if we accept these quotas now, they will push it even further and make us accept even more, and eventually our grandchildren will not look like us anymore. So they have a pretty, I mean, it's a conservative government, but they have an ethno-nationalist perspective. If you listen to the speeches, which makes me very happy, and I'm sure they will never accept these quotas. It will be impossible. I mean, Sweden and many other Western European states are in such a horrible condition and provide such a strong warning example that these countries will never ever go down that road.
Yeah. And how is, when you talk to the common Hungarian, I mean, what do they think? You have to have some, crazy leftists there too who think, it's awful with the closing borders.
They're all in Budapest, actually.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
But Budapest is, ironically enough, I mean, we consider Budapest as an extremely conservative and traditional city, but the Hungarians themselves consider Budapest like, it's totally liberal.
Yeah, they think it's a liberal cesspool. They all live out on the countryside. Most of my conservative Hungarian friends.
But still,
they can't stand it here.
But compared to any other European major city, Budapest is indeed a very conservative and traditional city, and the mayor and the vice mayor of Budapest they are conservatives from the Fidesz party, the governing party.
Well, many of the districts of Budapest are controlled. The local governments are controlled by the socialists and the communists. Unfortunately, so you don't see that anywhere else in Hungary. I think there's like one province of Hungary where the socialists were elected. Otherwise, it's all Jobbik and Fidesz. But
mostly Fidesz, not so much Jobbik. But still, I mean, the liberals and the leftists in Hungary are nothing at all like the liberals and the leftists in Sweden. I mean, even they don't dare to push for more immigration, really.
Well, some of them did, I've heard, but they of course didn't go anywhere with it, and some of them had to reverse their positions when they realized the Hungarian people.
I mean, I think it's above 80% or even close to 90% of the Hungarian people, they don't want any immigration at all. So if the liberals and the leftists are small and fragmented enough as it is, if they would start pushing for mass immigration, they would diminish quite quickly. They will never be able to do that.
What about homosexuality and gender theoretical indoctrination of toddlers and that kind of shit? No,
they have some gender studies at the George Soros University. I mean, the Central European University.
The CEU University. Yeah.
But which is of course the most well-funded university. But it's only one out of quite a lot of universities, and gender studies is not, and feminism for that matter, is not really an issue here in Hungary, nor will it be. As far as I can see, most Hungarians, even if they vote for some liberal or leftist party, they totally reject feminism. They totally reject, the gay pride movement and so forth. They've had a couple of gay pride parades. They've been extremely small, and they've been dressed like proper human beings, and not like in Sweden. They kind of walk around in like leather and latex uniforms and with dildos and everything.
if they're dressed at all. So
I was just gonna say, I've met some Hungarian women who call themselves feminists, but when you talk to them, it's more like the kind of feminism you would imagine in the West, like 100 years ago. It's not like radical feminism we have in the West.
Yeah, you just want to say about the Pride Festival here in Stockholm is, people are actually walking around with dildos glued to their face, screaming, "Take us seriously! We are just like you!" Yet what? You're not no way like me. And no, I'm sure many gays, just normal gays who just want to be gay on their own, they hate this kind of thing because it's such a cliche picture of the over-exotic, over-sexual, semi-male. That's how people talk about gays when they really want to talk bad about them. this is what they're showing. I mean, it's a huge thing here in Sweden too.
Yeah, all over the Western world, and it's because the so-called gay rights movement in the West is a completely subversive force aimed at destroying the traditional values and the nuclear family and so forth. They're part of this kind of cultural Marxist alliance aimed at weakening the white heterosexual man in favor of all other sexual minorities. Yeah, Ingrid, please.
I can tell you, Daniel, that they are really making progress in Sweden. I mean, it used to be bad, but with this new government, I just found out because I called, the ministries every day in different things, and you never get to talk to, the high up people, but you always get stuck with their press secretaries. And I found out that I think at least half of them now, the press secretaries, they come straight from RFSL, which is the main HBTQ. No, what's it called? Not HBTQ. What was it called? Gay organization.
LBT.
They come straight from that organization. When you Google their name, you can see them in pictures in different gay pride parades and so on. So it's actually that's a merit. If you come from that part of the world, you will get a top job in the Swedish administration.
Yeah. I just want to say shortly that the LGBTQ movement here in Sweden, it's so extremely powerful as a political organ. I mean, they have these classes where you can get your homo license, more or less, which costs a lot of money, and after that you can have people on a workplace who can report you if you say a gay joke, for example, you can get reported, and you're gonna have to go up to the boss and have a chat, and if you don't, I mean, I'm sure you can lose your job over this. So it's a very powerful thought controlling organization with a lot of money, a lot of people, and a lot of spies almost everywhere. It's crazy, actually.
It is, but I think also, I mean, this is paradoxical in a sense. This goes back to a time when very few people were overtly homosexual. So they developed sort of networks and they had information on people, when it wasn't accepted. So they built up a very powerful network that definitely predates the sexual revolution in the 60s or the 70s. So I mean, this was already put in place.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And I think we talked about that last time. But I mean, in Sweden we have, I think it's still just a suggestion, but where you can have your sex changed as young as, was it 15, Ingrid?
Yeah.
Yeah, without your parents' consent. You can have your penis cut off and made it into some kind of half vagina if you're 15 years old without your parents' consent.
Well, it's pretty awful considering, I mean, people when they're 15 don't know who they are yet. So, I mean, a lot of people...
No, of course not. No.
that's the worst period for knowing who you are, actually.
Yeah. And this is a life-altering thing, Yeah. And of course,
you're
I mean,
never as stupid as when you're 15.
Yes, hopefully. Maybe that's true. Never really get improved, but most of them are liberals. But
anyways, it's time for a short music break before we continue this discussion about Sweden, and we're going to listen to "Let Us Meet in the Trenches" with 3 Ora. So talk to you after the break.
I won't raise my hand in anger. I won't speak no words of spite. The friends I had have departed. I stand buried in the night. The memories I kept of the friends they claim to be, they will perish when I wake. And it's freedom that I feel. Let us meet in the trenches. Let us dance in the sun. Let us kiss in the bloodshed till the future has come. Let us meet in the trenches. Let us dance in the sun. Let us kiss in the bloodshed till the future has come. I won't raise my hand in anger. I won't speak no words of spite. The friends I had at heart, I stand buried in the night. The memories I kept of the friends they claim to be, they will perish when I wake, and it's freedom that I fear. Let us meet in the trenches. Let us dance in the sun. Let us kiss in the bloodshed till the future has come. Let us meet in the trenches. Let us dance in the sun. Let us kiss in the bloodshed till the future has come. Let us meet in the trenches. Let us dance in the sun. Let us kiss in the bloodshed till the future has come. Let us meet in the trenches. Let us dance in the sun. Let us kiss in the bloodshed till the future has come.
This is Right On Radio.
Welcome to Utopia, also known as Sweden. Sweden has been a laboratory of social experiments. Swedish leaders believe they're building the perfect society. And Sweden has been compared to a couple of nations which also tried to build perfect societies, North Korea and the Soviet Union. If you don't like how Utopia is being built here, you won't be shot like in North Korea, but your life could become very unpleasant very quickly. We talked to several journalists who described a Stalinist-style atmosphere in Sweden, in which citizens are now afraid of saying anything that might get them labeled in the media as racist. Sweden is not going to become a third world nation tomorrow, but according to one report, one day it will.
We had a perfectly good country, a rich country, a nice country, and in a few years' time, that country will be gone.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, reporting from Sweden and Denmark.
Well, that's a shocker. You hear here from Dale programs and views that you won't hear anyplace else. He does a terrific job, but that's frightening because Sweden was the haven for people fleeing the Nazis during World War II. And it was a place of freedom and liberty and prosperity. To think they could be killed by political correctness, it shows what could happen here.
And there we're back from the break, and we just listened to Let Us Meet in the Trenches with Fiore. So, Ingrid, I just watched this quite interesting video clip where actually the Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN, is comparing Sweden to North Korea. It was broadcast 2 years ago, but it was brought up, I think it was yesterday, by one of the major Swedish daily newspapers. Would you care to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I mean, Dale Hurd, the reporter, I think he's got a Swedish ancestor, but he's American. But he likes Sweden, and he comes here every other year or so to make, stories about Sweden. And this was broadcasted 2014, and it's about the downfall of Sweden. And I really don't know why it's gone viral now, but I'm happy because I think that it's a good clip. It's just 1 minute. And it's actually true. I mean, if you say that to people, Sweden is like North Korea. They will laugh and they will say, you're crazy. But of course, no, we don't send dissidents to prison. We don't kill them. But you are sort of killed in a social way because your personal life, your career will be destroyed if you criticize multicultural, Islamization and those sort of things. So in some respects, Sweden are turning into North Korea.
Yeah, no, but this is the point about North Korea, I think. I've read a bit about it, and I've made the comparison for 3 years between Sweden and North Korea. The thing with North Korea is that it's an extremely conformist society, and that people somehow feel enthusiastic about this oppressive atmosphere to a point which I don't think they did in Soviet Russia, for example, not to the same degree. And there's something sort of utterly intrinsically conformist with the Swedish left-wing liberal kind of or social democrat, whatever you want to call it, model, which is reminiscent actually of what is going on there. And there's a self-censorship as well, which is also reminiscent of the North Korean model.
Yes, it is. I mean, me and my colleague, we called the North Korean embassy a few years ago and just asked this question: how come you call your country the Democratic Republic of North Korea? And he said, I'm happy to answer that question. We have a leader and he makes all the best decisions for all the people. That is the best democracy you can get. And I think, I'm starting to think that this might be the way in Sweden too. I mean, we think that it doesn't matter which government we have because they are very much alike. If they're socialist or if they're conservative, there are no conservative parties in Sweden, just let me say that. But the ones who claim to be conservative, because they have the same policies, and people tend to think that they want to do the best for the Swedes. Why would they do anything else? They love us. They are not the dear leader, perhaps, but sort of.
Yeah, and if you think outside the box, you're automatically demonized in a way that you're still not in say, the UK or France. I mean, there is political correctness in these countries as well. There's no doubt about it, but not as bad as in Sweden.
Well, something that I found interesting in that clip was that he referred to Sweden as a laboratory for social experimentation, I believe he said. Yeah. I thought that was interesting because that's similar to a comment I've heard a number of Swedes make, that it's all they feel almost as if radical liberals try things out in Sweden first, like to sort of see how they'll go before they try to introduce the same things in other countries. Is that a feeling that all of you have?
Yeah, I mean, that's some kind of explanation at least, because the way things are going, I mean, any sane person can see that this is not the way to go, but they still just keep trying to do it and doing it more and more to us. I mean, this invasion force, we're expecting now, so the prognosis is 150,000 more so-called refugees this summer. I mean, we can't cope with that. I mean, that's going to be the last nail in the coffin.
Yeah, and as I say in this clip, that we had a perfect country. Sweden was a rich country, a nice country, a safe country, and a lot of Swedes still believe that Sweden is the best country in the world. Mm-hmm. But we are not anymore. I mean, we have destroyed this wonderful society in 30 years or something. It's unbelievable. I'm not sure that you could do this to any other people, but it's true, John, because, many multicultural companies, they actually try out new products in Sweden because Swedes are so... we really want to be in the forefront of everything. If there's a new mobile phone or there is a new computer or whatever it might be, Swedes will be the first ones to buy it. So they sort of test out things. So why wouldn't they do this in this social experiment too?
Yeah, but also very docile towards authority, actually. That's one of the problems. I don't think things were great. I mean, of course, they were better 30 years ago, but I think this goes further back, and I think they started using Sweden as, and I don't know who they are, but the powers that be, if you will, started using Sweden as a field of experiment, at least in the 60s. So
well, it may not even be a specific they. It might just be leading by example, because of course we see it with Bernie Sanders in the U.S., although he's hardly the first American liberal who's held up the Scandinavian model as the thing that America should be aspiring for.
But he's of that generation as well. Socialists of his generation, they tend to still sort of idolize Olof Palme and
sure, but you hear it from a lot of other American liberals too. And I'm not talking about long ago. I mean, even in the last election cycle. So it's definitely. People, and even, not just politicians, but I've also heard political commentators and even comedians in the U.S. who, talk about how much freer, allegedly, the Scandinavian countries are compared to the U.S.
Really?
Yeah, that's something I often hear, is that the Scandinavians have true freedom. In America, we just think we have freedom because we're a wealthy country, but in fact, we don't.
But how do they mean? I mean, freer how?
Freer in the sense that you actually don't have to worry about things like healthcare, and you get unemployment insurance is much more generous in the Scandinavian countries than it is in the U.S. Things like that.
This is not true anymore. I mean, that might still have been the case in the 80s, but it's not anymore. So, I mean, Sweden is in that way, for large segments of the population, it's certainly not the welfare state it used to be, and it's by no means the envy of the world anymore. Even though, as Ingrid says, it's true that some Swedes of older generations, especially, are still sort of they live under that impression, and that's not going to change, but.
But people that could say this in the U.S. always have an agenda of some sort, a liberal agenda. I don't think it's either that or there are people who've actually never been to Scandinavian countries, which of course is most Americans. So I don't take it very seriously when I hear it. It's something referenced to it.
Some people are waking up now, and especially those who are about to retire, because every year we get this big orange envelope from the authorities for pensions, or whatever that might be in English. And it says, if you retire when you are 62, that's a bit before you are supposed to, you will get this much money. If you retire when you are 65, that is sort of the normal age for retiring, you will get this sum. But if you work until you are 72, you will get this kind of money. So when people get this orange envelope, they see that the money that they thought they would have if they retire at 65, they will have to work until 72 before they get this money. So of course, a lot of people are beginning to be really scared now.
Yeah. And we have a third of the retired people in Sweden are counted as poor, meaning that they have little money to do. Some of them they can survive, but some of them they can't eat what they want. They can't go travel. Some people can't even afford their own medicine. And these are the people who built Sweden. And they can hardly survive. I mean, you see these elderly people going, they're not begging money because Swedes don't do that. But they try to get some cans to get a few extra bucks each month. I mean, it's heartbreaking to be honest. And the thing is, the Swedish media they don't want to talk to old people. No, that's interesting. They rather talk to Abula, who just came here. I mean, last week, and who now is just enjoying a hell of a better life than our pensioners are. Mm. And again, that's a third of the elderly people in Sweden. Mm.
Yeah, and it might sound like a very cynical and awful thing to say, but sometimes I do feel that the people that are sort of old and needy now, they are of the generation that is most responsible for having let this happen to Sweden, this transformation into multicultural society. So there's some kind of, I mean, I can understand why it has happened, but they remain quiet justify it, and now it comes sort of back to bite them. So there's some kind of justice to the whole situation.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. I mean you can always of course argue that they were lied to, and they were corrupt politicians and corrupt journalists who didn't tell the truth. But if somebody could have stopped this, it was the generation before us, and now we have to fix this. There's actually a beautiful song in Sweden called "Questions to My Father," where he sings just about this. This is a society you created, Father, and now we have to fix it. How does that make you feel? Are you proud of this?
Yeah, we had that in our previous podcast actually. So it's
really
a funny coincidence that you bring it up. But I agree with you, Jonas, and I feel even less sorry for the people going into retirement in 10 or 20 years, because they have been even more complicit in this total destruction of the Swedish welfare system.
But you must also understand that the young people now, say up to 35 or something, they have been indoctrinated and brainwashed in the school. I mean, this has been going on for so many years. So it's hard to, say who has been doing this willingly and knowing what was going to happen, and who were just thinking that they were good people. And I don't excuse them, because I think you always have to think for yourself and say, am I really good, or am I doing something that will be very hurtful to a lot of people? Mm-hmm. But you have to also understand that the Swedish school system is like it was in DDR, in East Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot, for example, they don't even invite the Sweden Democrats, even when there is an election going on. They try to keep them out of the school, and it's in their, I don't know what the word is in English, läroplan. Does anybody know what that would be in English?
Curriculum.
Yeah,
the curriculum for the schools. It says that we must, the teachers must teach the children of the good things about the multicultural society. It says exactly that, the good things about the multicultural society. That is what all the teachers are supposed to teach.
Well, that will be an extremely short lecture, I guess. I can't think of even one thing, but yeah, if you have enough fantasy, I'm sure you can come up with lots of stupid lies about.
Yeah, no, but I mean, this indoctrination it's been going on for quite some time. I'm going on 45 this year, and certainly something accelerated in the 90s. I agree on that, but this was sort of already around in the very sort of texture of the school system already back in the 80s, actually as far back as I can remember. This sort of anti-racist rhetoric, and we would have days in school when when children were supposed to protest against Pinochet's Chile, and I mean that kind of stuff. So it actually it goes back some time. Mm-hmm. It does.
Yeah, I read an article a little bit about this. That he said that it just a decade ago, it seemed like a very, very healthy thing to criticize journalists and journalism, and ask for sources, and point to some journalists saying, oh well, this is not news, this is just views. But nowadays it's the other way around. We actually have people who really are saying, well, if you criticize the Swedish journalist, that means you're against democracy. For real. Yeah. And people read this and saying, yeah, that sounds kind of right. Yeah, you shouldn't criticize. You should just, this is you just open your brain more and more for propaganda.
Yeah. Do you really think things are continuing to get worse then in Sweden?
You can see it's really obvious. It's both ways. I mean, people are starting to wake up more and more, and then the journalists are, they're getting to be worse and worse, and the government is being worse and worse. So it's.
But that can't continue for long, though.
No,
John, there's a polarization going on.
Oh, so you'll end up in a similar situation to the U.S. then, perhaps.
Well, I guess.
The polarization of the U.S. is greater than at any point in my lifetime. Maybe not ever, but I think it's being driven in part by social media, and the fact that people these days tend to get their news and so forth, from sources that agree with their preconceived notions.
Yeah.
So this tends to drive more and more division between left and right, and American society. Well, not that there is a real left or a real right in the U.S., but what there is very polarized for that reason.
And I think I would dare to claim that, the leftists, they don't want a discussion. They just, they block the people on Twitter, or they just try to report them. With the right, we want to have a discussion because we know that we are not only on the right, we are also right. We have the statistics, we have the ideology, and they don't want to talk about that. They just want to feel, that doesn't feel good when you say that, so I'll just block you. So their world is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And soon we'll be just two Twitter leftists, talking to each other and no one else.
Yeah, and regarding the polarization, I believe it's a good thing. We need more polarization within the Swedish political debate. We've had far too much consensus over the past decades, and the polarization is a natural development because more and more people, as you said, Conrad, are waking up, and the spontaneous reaction from most of the journalists are to just dig in deeper in their really fanatical, politically correct worldview and increase the propaganda and their fanaticism and become even more obnoxious and more crazy in their reports and in the media, and I truly believe that's a good thing because it will bring about the end of mainstream media in a more rapid pace than otherwise if they would be smart enough to adapt to the new situation and kind of start to at least be a little bit more truthful and so forth. So I'm very happy.
And this is it. They are stupid, and that's a good thing for us. There's no sort of strategic thinking on their part. It's just you raise your voice and you shout politically correct slogans even louder. So there's no intelligence there, and people are beginning to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very happy about that. It's very entertaining to watch the panicking that's going on in the leftist liberal camp.
What is the support for the Sweden Democrats right now? Is it 30% almost or something like that?
Yeah, depending on what kind of survey you like to trust. But the survey that is always has been closest to telling the numbers for the Swedish Democrats, I think it was 29 or 30, something around there.
Wow.
But there is really a big problem with the Sweden Democrats now, because they have been trying now for so many years, because everybody hated them and everybody called them racist and Nazis and fascists and whatnot. So they have been trying for the last 3 or 4 years, to become as liberal as possible. They don't want any racism, so-called racism in the party. They kick people out of the party for the slightest things. So they are now, when the other parties are starting to, enforce the policies that the Sweden Democrats have been saying for so long, with border controls and all these things, you might believe that the Sweden Democrats would push it a bit further, but they don't. They are actually just silent now. I actually heard the top leaders of the Sweden Democrats say that, well, now we are satisfied because the other parties, they are enforcing our policies. But the other parties have said time and again, this is just temporary. We don't want border controls forever. We just wanted a bit of room to breathe. So I don't understand what the Sweden Democrats are doing. I'm really, really disappointed.
Yeah, and I think all of us are very disappointed, and I really hope that they get their act together, or at least Mattias Karlsson steps down, which is pretty much the same thing. But you have some sort of personal problem with Mattias Karlsson? No, I don't. Actually, he's the one who has a personal problem with me, actually.
That's what I was getting at, yes.
But nevertheless, I think he makes a lot of stupid decisions, and I think he doesn't deserve the position he has within the party. And I'm saying this over and over again, and hopefully, eventually, enough people will listen, and maybe even Mattias will listen to me and take my advice and step down. That's my ambition and hope.
Because this is a time for the Swedish Democrats to go in for the kill. They should be handing out flyers or arranging demonstrations or doing whatever. But we can't see them. And of course, some claim that they're not let up in the media, and because that's true. The media can just stop stop them if they want to, but they can do their own things. They can do their own ad campaign. I mean, for example, just saying, this is what we said 2 years ago, and this is what happened. We had right. We were right the whole time. But they say nothing.
Actually, they did promise to do something like that, or something along those lines some 6 months ago, but nothing ever came.
Which makes it even worse. Yeah. And they actually had this big press conference saying that, well, we're so afraid now that Sweden is going to just go to hell. So we're going to do as much street activity as we can. We're going to be everywhere. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I thought, hey, that's a great idea. And then they did nothing.
No, I think really the problem is that you have this leadership in the Sweden Democrats. And I know I'm repeating myself to those who listen to the pod we had with Eric and with Fredrik Hagberg. But you have a leadership in the Sweden Democrats who are not that concerned really about what's going on. The catastrophe of this sort of mass influx of migrants and etc. They're more concerned about becoming accepted by the rest of the Swedish political establishment. And that is really, really shameful. I mean, you know, what
it's really a disaster, because now they're all we have. That there is, as I said before, there is really no conservative party. All the parties in the Swedish parliament is sort of social democrats with the small differences. And what is happening now is that as the Sweden Democrats have been so keen on being accepted, they don't say the things that they need to say now. And I think people will lose hope over this. And that is, it really makes me worried.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, at the end of the day, they don't want to be an opposition party anymore. They want to get into the warmth. That's what it's about. Obviously, it doesn't go for their members. It doesn't go for their voters. But it certainly goes for the leadership, which is, I would say, corrupt, no less.
Well, as an outsider, let me ask all of you. I mean, if the Sweden Democrats actually don't pan out and they don't represent a genuine right-wing opposition in Sweden, is there another group that can take up the slack, or will you have to start from scratch, essentially?
From scratch, I would say. We had the Swedish party who was in the election, but they had to quit. And I don't know if we have any alternatives. I mean, we have some theories. Well, this guy might start a new party, but I mean, it takes at least a decade. It usually does to get some actual power. So I don't see any alternative. I don't know about you guys.
Well, I think it will be much easier for a new party to gain a foothold and gain entrance to the parliament, because the number of potential voters are about 10 times as many, or will be about 10 times as many in the next election than they were a couple of elections ago. So the market, so to speak, for this kind of parties have grown immensely. That's true, yeah.
If the party of the Swedes, which you mentioned, which sort of, foiled about a year ago, if they would have persisted, I do think that they would have at least trebled or quadrupled their membership, let alone their support, because they did so just before this sort of explosion of migrants coming into to Sweden. So I think that was extremely bad. I'm not criticizing the guys, and I know them well, and etc. And I can see why they did as they did, and they were overworked and so on and so forth. But I think it's one of those examples of incredibly bad timing.
I think they are. I mean, the reason that they didn't succeed, and they never would have succeeded, because they were too extremist. Swedes don't like that. They like, sort of the new democracy we had in the 80s, early 90s, like a really populist party. People being, nice. These were two tough guys. They sort of looked like Nazis, and Swedes don't like Nazis. They want people who are nice, say the right things, but have a nice presentation. And I think they didn't have that.
People like me.
Yeah.
That's good.
The Sweden Democrats didn't have that some 15 years ago, Ingrid. So things can change, and the perception of a political group can change. And also when things get worse in a society, which has happened definitely in Sweden pretty fast. I mean, it attitudes and what have you can change as well. Otherwise, I agree with you, but I still do think that if they would have stuck around when the migrant crisis sort of exploded, it might have changed things. Yeah.
You're probably right, and that's my greatest concern, because I want my freedom. I don't want to live under some dictator, but I am really afraid that what will happen if this goes on and on in Sweden, and Swedes get more and more desperate, you will have the great leader, someone, a strong man stepping forward and say, I have all the solutions. You just need to follow me. Don't think anymore. Don't accept that you cannot say whatever you want and la la la. And then we have a totalitarian state. I don't want that.
Someone like Donald Trump.
No, in my eyes, he's not a totalitarian, but you never know.
No, I'm just kidding. But I think we definitely need a strong leader, but he doesn't have to be totalitarian. Just because of that, I mean, Trump is obviously a strong masculine leader, and Sweden is really lacking of such leaders. But it's possible to have a strong leader and still have freedom-loving state and society. And I mean, during our entire history, we have had many kings, very strong kings, where the people have enjoyed more freedom than in any other periods of history. If you have an enlightened king, for example, who is safe in his position, there is no need to kind of infringe on the liberties of people and try to limit their freedom of speech and so forth. I think what we have now is pretty much as totalitarian as it gets, because they are insecure in their power position and they therefore have to limit our freedoms. They have to limit our freedom of speech. They have to try to create new laws and try to stop what they call hatred on the web, which is basically just upset citizens speaking their mind about the migrant policies and so forth. So I think, what I'm trying to say is that, a democratic society can be completely totalitarian. I mean, the current Swedish society is a proof of that. Okay, it's time to wrap this wonderful podcast up, and I would like to give the opportunity to our guests, Ingrid and Conrad, to say some final words. If there's something you would like to recommend to our listeners, feel free.
Yeah, of course, we would like to, for our Swedish listeners, our podcast, which you can find on ingridochconrad.se. In Swedish, that is ingridochconrad.se, and that's Conrad spelled with a C. And I would like to thank you for inviting us. It's always very interesting, and also thank you for your hospitality and showing us Budapest. And I would really recommend people going there, and I will also recommend people to have a look at Sweden and do your research and see what can happen if a culture and the people don't actively defend themselves, then they will go under, and that's what's happening here in Sweden. And that's not in any way an overstatement, because that's what's happening now day by day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're welcome. It's our pleasure. It was fun hanging out this weekend, definitely.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure to have you visiting. And Ingrid, any last words?
Yeah, I just want to say again that I have nothing against, strong leaders in the sense that they know what they're talking about. They're intelligent. They are brave. They're bold. They mention the problems, and I would say they're not always men. I am very fond of Marine Le Pen in France, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, she is good. And her daughter seems to be promising as well.
Also, Margaret Thatcher, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
actually, Marion Le Pen is the niece of Marine Le Pen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think she said Marine, but anyways, but both are great women, of course, and we wish them all the best. And I want to thank everyone for listening to this podcast, and tune in a few days again. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.